program that's been organized for today's event. It's GAKİD, which simply translates to Ghana Development and Cooperation Organization, and in its Turkish version, Gana, Kalkınma ve İşbirliği, Derneği, hence the name GAKİD. Ladies and gentlemen, with the powers vested into my hands as the MC for today's program, let me quickly call upon a brother to invoke upon the blessings of Almighty Allah for us to have a successful program. And on this note, let me have the singular honor of inviting Abubakar to come and give us the opening prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be in a prayerful mood with all solemnity and sobriety.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. We invoke in the name of Allah as we start this our program, and we hope inshallah we have a successful end. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Brother Abubakar. Perusing through the program lineup for today, we have lots and lots of things to do. And I guess brothers and sisters assembled in this hall all understand perfectly the Queen's language. So I might not be in a position to speak the native language of the land we are currently on. Now, the dignitaries have arrived, our speakers have arrived. We have opened officially the program to kickstart. And on this note, let me invite each and every one of us to stand up for us to observe the Ghana national anthem. Bizim İstiklal Marşımız. Lütfen ayağınız kalkın. National anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, a program of this nature certainly deserves a capable driver who is capable of steering the affairs of the program to a successful end. And on this note, let me invite somebody we have designated as the chairman for today's occasion. He is no less a person than also a Ghanaian who had his elementary education in the Republic of Ghana. He had his first undergraduate education in social science education and majored in economics at Ghana's University of Cape Coast, UCC. He then proceeded, of course, and found himself in the tentacles of Turkey at Gazi University. What did he read? He read, yet again, economics. And proceeded further, and he's currently still a student pursuing his doctorate, his PhD in the field of economics. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a father of 2 children, a boy and a girl. He is in the person of Brother Mohammed. With a round of applause, let me invite him on stage. Please give him a round of applause. And before he takes center stage, before my position is officially cut, let me announce that indeed he is the Vice President of our association, GAKİD. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if my microphone is working.
Can you please check it for me?
Behind. Hello? Hello? Hello? Is it working? All right. Thank you so much, Mr. MC. For once, I didn't know the person you were talking about, but thank you so much, and I believe with your cooperation, we're going to have a very successful program. Without much ado, since my duty is very huge, I'll hand over to the MC to continue with the program, and I'll come with my closing remarks at the end of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My position isn't ended after all. So, with the powers, little powers vested into my hands, having perused through the program lineup, Mr. Chairman, with your kindest consideration, we need to talk about GAKİD. It's about Ghana. It's Ghana's birthday. What is Ghana? Or who is Ghana? If indeed Ghana is a human being or a person, we should have somebody to talk about Ghana. We should have somebody to talk about the association that came out of the people who came from Ghana by name GAKİD. And on this note, let me invite one of our brothers who in his capacity is the General Secretary of GAKİD. Ladies and gentlemen, he is also a medical doctor by profession. Help me to welcome Dr. Rashid Al-Hassan to give us the welcome address.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure as the General Secretary of GAKİD to welcome you all and say how grateful we are to have you in our midst for this maiden symposium on Ghana's activities in the 61st independence celebration. Ghana having just 61 years since independence from Britain on 6th March 1957, we at GAKİD thought it is necessary to organize a symposium of this kind on the theme Ghana at 61, an appraisal of our political, economic, and educational trajectories. And the word is educational trajectories, not tragedy. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to use this opportunity to also say a few things about our organization. The Ghana Development and Cooperation Organization, also known in Turkish as GAKİD, that is Ghana, Kalkınma ve İşbirliği Derneği, is an NGO established in Ankara on the 14th of June 2016. The organization, which is legally registered under the laws of the Republic of Turkey, has the following goals and objectives. One is to strengthen the economic and cultural relations between Ghana and Turkey. Two is to spearhead projects that provide support in the field of education, health in our Ghanaian communities. And three, to facilitate the transfer of technology in the areas of agriculture, communication, and other social services between Ghana and Turkey. Mr. Chairman, we are running two main activities under our organization currently. One is the provision of scholarship. We thought it was wiser. Why don't we mobilize some money so we can help our brothers and sisters back home in Ghana? So currently we have students in Ghana that we are sponsoring and our scholarship program. And then the second program that we're running currently is we have a fortnight seminars that we organize in our office in Syria. Every 2 weeks we have a program, and then we have different topics. We have distinguished speakers who come to deliver various talks. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, once again I give you a very good welcome and wish you a very successful symposium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Secretary. I couldn't have said it any better. Thank you very much once again. Mr. Chairman, are my powers still extended, or I should hand over at this material moment?
You can continue.
Thank you very much, Devam Edelem Bedi. All right. Now we have come to the head of the program itself. It's about Ghana. Today, we are going to zigzag around and then speak unilaterally about the word or who is Ghana. We're going to talk about Ghana's economy. We're going to talk about Ghana's education. And we're going to talk about Ghana's politics. The good, the bad and the ugly, of course. But it's a moment to relish. And on this note, let me quickly give you a biodata of our first speaker. Our first speaker had his education, of course, in Ghana. He proceeded to Ghana's premier university, the University of Ghana, where he read 3 subjects: psychology, linguistics, and of course, history. Along the way, he discovered himself, just as Einstein quickly discovered himself at a very tender age. What did he do? He dropped history. He proceeded with psychology and linguistics, graduated with a very strong first class in BA psychology from the University of Ghana. He is an army student, of course. He found himself at ANKARA University and continued with his master's in social psychology. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not enough, he said. Education doesn't have any barriers. I persuaded him to go into business, and he said, education we shall and conquer we shall. He proceeded, and he currently finds himself as a PhD student at Ankara Yildirim Beyazıt University, still pursuing a PhD in social psychology. He is a daddy with 2 wonderful kids and a beautiful wife. Ladies and gentlemen, he is also in his capacity as the president of GAKİD, Ghana Kalkınma ve İşbirliği Derneği. Again, that is not enough. He is currently employed as an international baccalaureate, what is known as IB program at Chankaya University's Ari complex of schools. Ladies and gentlemen, should I proceed, or that is enough? Mr. Chairman, he is a hard-working daddy, a student, a colleague, a friend, a president of GAKİD. It is under his stewardship that you and I have found ourselves today representing on this program. With a round of applause, help me welcome Mohammed MUBARIQUE. And his topic for today is to zigzag around and chronicle Ghana's historical overview in terms of education, the pros, the challenges. Mr. Speaker, over to you. I shall return, however.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, colleague students, and ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all, and welcome to our maiden symposium. I feel very honored to stand in front of you today to talk about a country I love so much, and most importantly, to talk about something I believe is the key to development in every part of the world, and that is education. I'm very grateful for your time here, and I hope that we'll be able to do our duty expeditiously. Thank you. Well, looking at the topic, Mr. Chairman, given to me, historical overview of Ghana's educational system, challenges and prospects. This is not a 30-minute topic. This is a huge topic. Actually, if we have to just focus on historical overview of Ghana's educational system alone, we will not be able to finish. But we will do our best to see whether we can highlight especially some of the significant parts, and then we will leave the rest. Our presentation today is going to be in this way. We have the following layout. We would start by having to look at Ghana in pre-European era, before the coming of the Europeans. I particularly selected this part because I would like to throw light on the fact that Africa in particular, we had something in place before the coming of the Europeans. So we will look at that, and we would also look at Ghana during the mercantile period. I'm talking about the time that the Europeans now came to Ghana I'm talking about the Portuguese, the Danish, the Dutch. It will not be detailed, just something short. Education during this time. And we will proceed further to look at education in the colonial time of Ghana and what happened in post-colonial Ghana, what are the educational reforms. And then finally, we'll proceed to look at the challenges we have with our educational system. We'll look at some of them. And then we'll wrap up our presentation with the prospects, the strengths, or the achievements that we can talk about. So that will be the layout for our presentation today. We start. I started with a question. Ghana in pre-European era. Was there a system of education in Ghana? Did we have education in the first place before the coming of the Europeans? Well, if you look at the annals of history, you will understand that yes, indeed, we had a form of education. But what form of education did we have as a country? We had an informal form of education. So contrary to the popular belief that Africans before the coming of the Europeans used to live on trees, were uncivilized, did not know how to manage their own affairs. Clearly, this is not the case. We had a certain form of education, but it was informal. It was not formalized. People were learning how to weave clothes. People were also learning masonry, carpentry. There are so many evidence to that effect. So there was a system of education in place, but the only difference was that it was not formal. As we can see in the photo, this is a photo of a woman weaving what we call in Ghana kente. Now, kente is a cloth that is very popular in Ghana. These practices dated back pre-European Ghana. So, and people were learning how to do all these things. So there was a form of education in Ghana, but the system was informal and it was also not standardized. But we had evidence, there is evidence that we had a form of education. I would call it a system of education that was not formal. So there was a system of education in pre-European Ghana, but what was it? It was not the formal type that we used to know. Then, after that, we had the coming of the Portuguese, the Danish, the Dutch, and of course, the English merchants. These were business people who wanted to trade. They wanted to trade in rubber, in pepper. They also wanted to trade in gold. Of course, Ghana at the time was called Gold Coast because it was a coast of gold. We had lots of gold at the time. So the Europeans came in the name of trading with us in this particular product. What happened? They set up forts, castles within the coast, around the coastal areas of Ghana. That was where they settled. There again, there was a system of education. But unfortunately, that system of education was directed to a specific class of people. We want to call them, in the English dictionary, we call them the mulatto children. Mulatto children are basically children that come from parents from, different races. Let's say a black woman and a white man. So the children of the merchants who got married to the black Africans, they were called the mulatto children. And they were the children who had the opportunity to have formal education, a certain kind of formal education in the castle at the time. So there was an education, but again, as we can see, it was not widespread. It was not formal everywhere. It was only targeting specific class of people. This was the system we had under this regime. Now, still under this regime, as you can see, this is the Elmina Castle, a very famous castle in Ghana. This is where the first Europeans who came to Africa settled. This is the Elmina Castle, and the kind of education I'm talking about normally took place in places like this. Within the same mercantile period, we also had the activities of the Christian missionaries. of course. They also came, we can talk about the Basel Mission Society of Switzerland at the time. They also came into Ghana, they came to Ghana in the name of spreading the gospel. But how could you do that if you do not set up educational institutions where you can teach people the gospel and what have you? So they also played a role, and they set up some form of educational schools across the country. They were propagating Christianity, but at the same time, they were also teaching, especially the young men and women, some form of technical education. They were giving them some form of technical education. For instance, as you can see, like sewing, how to sew dresses. This was a form of education that they were giving to them at the time. And then also teaching them, of course, about the Bible. They were also teaching them the English language. And indeed, they also helped to translate most of the Ghanaian languages to standardize some of them. So this was it. The focus of education was purely on reading, writing, a bit of technical, especially for women, and also the gospel. And they extended their tentacles to the interior part of Ghana at the time. They also played a key role to set up training colleges, to train teachers who would continue to propagate exactly what they were there to do. So that was also the kind of education we had. Under the mercantile period, we had those who were being educated in the forts. I'm talking about the mulatto children. And we also had the activities of the missionaries who were across the country organizing different forms of education. Indeed, in 1882, the Basel Mission Society of Switzerland, the Basel Mission actually is a German society. They have their headquarters in Switzerland, Basel. So they came to Ghana, managed to convince the chiefs, to send the children to some of these schools. So it opened a door, if you want to call it, for the beginning of formal education in Ghana at the time. Then after, we had the colonial era, colonial Ghana. So we can see that before the colonial era, there was a certain system of formal education, attempts to introduce it. It was already in place. But it was not standardized. There was no proper system. The missionaries were doing different kinds of activities. So the colonial government saw the need to bring all of them together, to formalize it and come up with a more elaborate and a more coherent system. So I can say that during the colonial time was the beginning of a formal educational system in Ghana. The formal educational system, we want to call it, started around this time across the country. What happened around this time? They instated what they call inspector of schools. Now, the inspector of schools is responsible not only for Ghana, but is responsible for other African countries as well, like Gambia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria. The inspector of schools is in charge of all of these places, education for the people. Later, subsequently, they created an office of Director of Education to be in charge of specific regions. So Ghana at the time, we also had Director of Education who was in charge of education primarily in Ghana. This was the kind of system that took place. This is the contribution, as we can see. Now, I don't want to bother you much with a lot of history. I'll try to summarize it, to make it short. What happened after colonialism? In 1957, we managed to secure ourselves from the control of the British government. In a way, we became independent. Actually, the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence from colonial rule is Ghana. In 1957, we then had our first president, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I'm sure he's not, this name rings well in the ears of all Africans who are in this particular place. It's a very common name in the African continent. he came out with the Accelerated Development Plan of 1951. Now, following this plan, what happened was simple. Education, for him, he set up a system of education where primary education was 6 years, and it was compulsory and free at the same time. He believed that people should be given primary education because his belief was that after primary education, people can be given other technical skills to be able to help in the socio-economic development of the country. So it was called FQ, Free, Compulsory, Universal, Basic Education. But his was for 6 years, primary education. After the 6 years of primary education, you will proceed to have 4 years of secondary education, and then after that, you can go to the university. This was a system that was in place by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah at the time he was in power. But as you know, almost every country, not only in Africa, experienced some dark eras. Kwame Nkrumah in 1966, unfortunately, was overthrown by some group of military juntas, and they set up their own government. We call it the National Liberation Council. When it came to power, it also instituted a different educational system. What kind of educational system? They made some changes to the educational system that was in place by Kwame Nkrumah. They changed it from 6 years to 8 years of basic education, and then you have 5 years of secondary education, and you have 4 years of university education. This was the system. I'm just trying to rush fast. They also did not live long when they were equally overthrown by another military coup, which saw the coming of a new government, which was National Redemption Council. Also, this government set up a system of education. They also reviewed the system of education in Ghana. And they made the primary education from primary 1 to 6. They made it 6 years. They introduced another system they called the Junior Secondary School, which is the JSS. They made it 3 years. And then they made the Senior Secondary School 4 years. So this is the transition. University was still 4 years at the time. Then comes the PNDC era, also in the 1980s. The PNDC era in the 1980s, unfortunately, it was also a military intervention. Ghana experienced serious economic problems in terms of food and many problems. So they rushed to the World Bank trying to secure some kind of help in order to help salvage the situation. And as you know, the international community do not give you money without conditions. So part of those conditions were for them to reform the educational system in Ghana at the time. So this demand resulted again in a review of our educational curriculum. Again, we had 6 years of primary education was maintained. The junior secondary school had 3 years. But the senior secondary school was reduced from 4 years to 3 years. So this had been in place till 2007. In 2007, when a new government came to power, again, the educational system was reviewed because they campaigned that the educational system in place, especially the senior secondary school 3 years, was inadequate to prepare students for university education. On the basis of this, when they took over the reins of affairs, they reduced the 4-year term, and they increased the 3-year term to 4 years. And so that was what happened. So we had 6, 3, 4 now. The same university education is maintained 4 years. So these are the phases that Ghana's educational system has seen. Right after before Europeans and after our colonial rule. And it is important for me to highlight that all these changes that I've talked about significantly affected pre-university education. So the question is that, what about tertiary education? When we talk about tertiary education, we're talking about after senior secondary school education. Now the system in Ghana, we have, in addition to universities, we have also polytechnics. Now the polytechnics were specifically set up to train people on technical education, to equip them with some form of technical education. At the end of the 3-year program, a student is awarded a diploma program, highest national diploma they call it. Again, you and I would understand that in our contemporary situation, things are changing. And so the educational curriculum has also changed. I mean, when you come to Turkey to pursue your master's, the question that you are asked is, which university degree do you have? The quest for degree has also called for the government to review the status of polytechnics as diploma-based institutions to degree-based institutions. So the polytechnics also saw some reforms. Now they have become degree-based institutions. Unlike before, now they also offer degrees in their respective programs. We can also talk about the nursing training. They are also giving diplomas, and there are attempts to also make them degrees, and the teacher training institutions are as well the same. University is still the same. There's no any other problem. So in summary, this can be said to be the transitions or the various transitional phases that Ghana's educational system has gone through. Now we will proceed to look at the challenges that we face as a country in our educational system, and then we'll look at the prospect, and then I will bring my speech to a close. Can you proceed? Good. In terms of the challenges, as you can see, we suffered from, and we still continue to suffer from, external interference, especially by international organizations that are ready to give you some kind of support. They always want to match it against the educational system you have in your country. So like I mentioned, in the 1980s, we had to review our educational system simply because of donor support. So some of these things happened. And even quite recently, the educational system in Ghana, they were not taking new teachers because, again, of requirement they were supposed to meet that was set up by the IMF, International Monetary Fund. So external interference creates some kind of problems or has some impact on our educational system. The next one is political party interference. As you can see, almost all the parties that came to power, talk about the military juntas, to even democratically elected governments. We can talk about the 2007 review of our educational system by the then NPP government, and the NDC government also came later to review it and change it from the 4-year term to 3-year term. Now the NPP government is in power. They are also attempting to change. So there are consistent political party interference. All of them are trying to design a system that suits their political ideology, which is really a problem for our educational system. The next one is infrastructure facilities. We still are battling with modern infrastructure facilities. We have lots of our institutions that are still lag behind when you have to compare them to other countries in terms of infrastructure. This is very common, it's not something unknown. The next is high cost of university and tertiary institutions. Unlike Turkey and maybe other European countries, in Ghana, tertiary institutions and university educations are still cost-based. You still have to pay for it, and it's a big problem because the cost is unfortunately not also reducing, it's consistently increasing. and becoming a challenge, especially for young, deprived, but very intelligent students to continue to pursue their education to the higher level. So that is a challenge for us now. And then also, our educational system is having a bit of, we focus too much less on equipping students with practical and entrepreneurial skills. You understand that in our contemporary society today, there is no way you can finish. It's very difficult to say that I want to finish school and go and work in government institutions or some companies. It's very, very difficult. So it means that dynamic educational institutions should be focused on churning out graduates who will aim at establishing their own business so that they can be in a position to create an environment that will motivate others to do so. But unfortunately, our education is mostly based on training people to end up just dreaming about occupying some of these positions, and it's a big challenge to us. It is one of the big reasons why we have graduates unemployment in our country, and unfortunately this is not only peculiar to Ghana. In most African countries the trend is the same. These are the challenges. What are the prospects? Well, with respect to the prospects, we will say that, unlike before, there is a significant increase in girl child education in Ghana. Previously, we used to think that the only place for women is home and the kitchen. But fortunately, today things have significantly changed. Ladies have bigger role to play in our educational system. And indeed, if you look at the universities, I can talk about University of Ghana, for instance. They've got policies, affirmative action policies in place, where they give a certain quota to women to encourage more women enrollment in university education. This is a great step in our educational system that I am very proud to share with everyone. Significant increase in number of tertiary institutions. This is also credit to government open door policies to private sector. The private sector is allowed to set up schools, and that has helped to complement government efforts at constructing more schools. But like I mentioned, the cost aspect is still a problem, a challenge. The free education till high school, the free education used to be just for primary and GSS, but today, till high school, students pay nothing, which is really positive in our country. This is to help increase the number of enrollments, especially in second cycle institutions. This is a very important achievement I am also glad to share. Also, we have the school feeding program. The school feeding program was instituted simply to take care of, because we have a challenge where some students do not come to school simply because when they come to school, they do not even have money to spend. Problems related to food and other challenges because of poverty. Parents feel that to send my son to school, give him this money, it will be better for me to send him to the market, to go and work and earn some kind of income for the family. So the government came in and instituted a school feeding program, currently running. Students are given 2 meals a day, I guess, in the school, free of charge by government. So they go to school, they have free education, free food at the same time. This is really something I'm very proud also to share in terms of our prospect, looking at where we're coming from. And the last one is increments in our illiteracy rates. It's been very, very positive, increment in our illiteracy rate compared to the past. Sorry. Reduction in our illiteracy rate and an increase in our literacy rate. It's something very positive I'm also glad to share with you. I mean, compared to the past. These are the achievements that we can talk about. There are many of them. Like I said, I have tried to rush through because we started the program late. And then also, I do not want to bother you too much with a lot of details, so I try to make everything in, as brief as possible. I hope that everything was properly understood. I believe also there will be question and answer session. If we've got some questions, we can always raise them during that time, and I'll be very glad to deal with it. Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Mubarak, PhD, Social Psychology. That was wonderful. Isn't it? It's good, right? If it's not good, I can power it for you. All right, Mr. First Speaker, who just spoke on historical overview of Ghana's education, the pros and the cons. For the sake of those who are just with a single language, we have the bilinguals and the trilinguals and the Dutch linguals, like us, of course, who speak 10, 11 languages. I would like to call on our brother who in one way or the... Hello? Testing my quantity. Of summary, and not to disadvantage those who cannot understand perfectly the Queen's language to also in one way or the other benefit from what our first speaker has spoken about. And on this note, before I call on our brother, let me seize this golden opportunity once again, Mr. Chairman, to acknowledge some of our visitors representing different countries. And the first on my list is of course a colleague, a right-hand man, who is representing the Republic of Sierra Leone. Bwake Hamid, you are welcome. And of course, with his right-hand lady, all the way far away from Vanuatu. You know them, right? Maureen, you are welcome. Our brothers, our neighbors from Nigeria, Wara, you are welcome. Ethiopian brothers, we can acknowledge you, we have seen you. You are also welcome. And of course, our own Turkish brothers, let me personally welcome you. Bizim programımıza hoş geldiniz. Our own brothers also from Ghana, led by Hassan Furkan and Kidas, all the way from Izmit in Coordinally, or what you know as Gebze.
From Istanbul.
Or from Constantinople, you are welcome. Alright. It has been acknowledged. And of course, we also have a set of brothers led by our Honorable Dr. Sheikh Abdul Kadri, who is also a PhD in international relations, I guess, representing those from Sakaria. You are all welcome. And our own buddies who are here. This program would be incomplete without me, the MC, taking part of the chairman's powers to acknowledge you. And on this note, let me call on Brother Yusuf, my own personal secretary and the deputy secretary of GAKİD, to give us a summary in the Turkish language. Buyurun, gelebilir misin? Ben de yapabilirim tabii ki.
Evet. İngilizler geçti, artık Türklere geldi. Sayın Başkan ve buraya gelen bütün kıymetli ve muhterem kardeşlerimiz, gene bir daha hoş geldin diyoruz sizlere. Burayı çok şereflendirdiniz gerçekten. Öncelikle bizim birinci konuşmacımız Mohammed Mübarek Bey, Gana'nın eğitim sistemine tarihi bir bakışla başladı. Aslında onun konusu buydu. Gana'nın eğitim sistemine tarihi bir bakış. Başarılar ve zorluklar diye devam etti. Önce yaşadığımız zorluklarla başladı ama ondan önce de bir introduksiyonla başladı. Ve bu introduction'la introduction'da ne dedi bize? Yani böyle bir inanç vardı. Aslında Afrikalı olmayanlarda var böyle bir inanç. Hep diyor ki Avrupalılar bizim Afrika'ya gelmeden önce hiçbir eğitim sistemi yokmuş. Yani böyle bir söyleyiş vardı. Bunu tamamen yanlış olduğunu açıkladı bize ve bazı örneklerle de devam etti. Önce örme vardı, örmeyle başladı, örme vardı, bir de inşaatçılar da vardı bu Avrupalılar gelmeden önce. Ondan sonra da zorluklarda, bizim yaşadığımız zorluklarda da dıştan bir etki var bizim Afrika'ya. Genelde sadece Gana için değil de, yani uluslararası örgütler yardım ettikleri için, bizlere yardım ettikleri için bayağı bir etki veriyor bizim eğitim sistemimize. Bir de siyasi müdahale var bizim Gana'da. Siyasetçiler hep değiştirme yapıyor bizim eğitim sistemimize. Bu parti kazanıyor, bir değiştirme yapıyor bizim sistemimize.
Teşekkür ederim Yusuf Bey. Mr. Chairman, Sayın Başkan, izninizle ben de Türkçe devam edebilir miyim diye sordum. Tamam. Şimdi ise anyway, let me continue in English before I come stumbling down. Yes, at this point in time, let me give you a mechanical break, where a mechanical break means just a short breather, so that we can have a video presentation about the Republic of Ghana. And from then, we can continue with our normal schedule. Mr. DJ, zigzag through the IT department, and let us see what you have for us.
There is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
Ghana, a welcoming and warm African nation, inhabited by over 25 million people. Ghana sits on the west coast of Africa, between Côte d'Ivoire and Togo.
I hope I'm not cutting short your little bit of entertainment and happiness with regards to these videos. That is Ghana for you in retrospect. Mr. Chairman, before I carry you into the next world, once again, message has just gotten into my ears that we have a couple of partners and brothers whom, with my powers and not yours, I would like to acknowledge our brothers and sisters from the Republic of Gambia, where my namesake ever ruled. And of course, one of our very important partners in Turkey, known as Musiat Sayin Hussein, who is also the Vice President, General Muduria Dengisi. You are welcome, Hajj Denise. Mr. Chairman, let me take you to the second session of our program, entitled Politics After Independence and the Journey Towards Democratization So Far, to be presented by a senior brother who also, just like our first brother, had his umbilical cord deeply rooted in the Republic of Ghana. He was born, bred, buttered, and even toasted in Ghana at the University of Ghana, Ghana's premier university, where he read Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and graduated with a very strong first class. Where did that take him to? It took him far away from the shores of Gold Coast to one of the booming economies in Asia, Singapore. He had his master's degree in international relations and majored in politics, of course, at the National University of Singapore. Thereafter, he came back home to serve his motherland, just like in the phrase of corporate social responsibility, to give back to society. When he worked a bit, and also just like my first brother said, education, very can shake, it doesn't have a name. So what did he do? He entered into the plane right with me and came to Turkey. And he currently finds himself at the Middle East Technical University, Outdoor Technique University, O2. He's reading PhD in International Relations. Well, Mr. Chairman, let me not over-dramatize. He's also a daddy with 3 booming kids, 2 girls and a boy. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, help me to welcome Ahmed Mustafa Badawi.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, whom I believe the MC has already, our journey towards democratization so far. As you could see from the first presenter, actually, all the topics we are given is not a 30-minute, topic, but we will try as much as our possible can to, do the best that we can. Okay. Ideally, we're supposed to start with respect to this topic, post-independence era, with historical background. Pre-colonial, colonial, then we come to post-colonial. And this is very important because it helps us to establish some kind of context and to appreciate how far we have come as a nation state. But unfortunately, doing this will be really difficult. But nonetheless, I would like to, dig a little bit into the annals of history so as we can, establish a context within which we operate. Ghana, before the advent of the colonial, colonizers, had an empire called the Ghana Empire. Before I delve into that, I would like to show you the outline of my presentation. So, as I mentioned, pre-colonial, colonial, post-colonial. And with respect to the post-colonial, we had a very, very, how shall I put it, like sort of sweet sour journey with respect to our politics. And I've tried so hard to categorize the historical epochs, but I was able to finalize on 5. So we are going to operate within these 5 epochs. We'll come back to that. A brief appraisal and conclusion. So this is, by way of outline of my presentation. So I mentioned about Ghana Empire before. Actually, historically, according to documented, history and evidence, Ghana Empire existed between 300 Common Era to 1250. And my interest here, with respect to my topic, is the fact that, and also my brother emphasized it regarding education. When we talk about Africa, there is this understanding that, prior to the coming of the Europeans, we had no, civilization. And it will surprise you if you dig into the annals of history to see that Ghana Empire was a very formidable political structure with a very strong economic structure. So it was in control with the Trans-Saharan gold and salt trade. It had a very strong ties with the Arab world in terms of trade, especially North Africa, the Arabs and the Berbers. And this actually interaction went on for a very long time. But unfortunately, fast forward, we have in North Africa a dynasty or an empire called the Almoravids or the Almoravitun in Arabic. This empire engaged the Ghana Empire actually. And before I come back to this point, to understand this context, before the Westphalian system, state system, the world is governed by empire-state system where we have different kinds of empires. And the extension of your strength or your borders has to do with how much you can conquer. So conquest was kind of order of the day. It shows your strength. So they ventured into our world and engaged the empire, into a series of battles, which depleted our resources, the resources of the empire, and weakened it. But interestingly, the empire was never defeated by this Almoravitun, but it's sort of transformed it into something else, into what we call the Mali Empire and the Songhai Empire. And I wouldn't like to go into details. This was so primarily because of migration. People migrated towards the side of Mali. So we had Mali Empire coming up in the wake of the weakness of Ghana Empire. Later we had the Songhai Empire. So what I want to put across is that even far centuries before the advent of the Europeans, we had, as a people, a political structure. Before talking about colonial era, before the advent of the colonial era, in addition to the existence of Ghana Empire, even within the current, because the Ghana Empire actually is a bit far away from the modern day Ghana, if you look at geographically. But an interesting thing is, even before the advent of the colonial, colonizers to the current geographical location of Ghana, there existed, different states. The Fanti state, the Ashanti state, the Dagon state, different kinds of states existed, telling us that we had a political system before the advent of colonizers. Now, fast forward, my brother mentioned about this, I didn't go into that. British, to cut a long story short, the British settled as our colonizers for over 100 years. Ghana was under the colonization of the British. In terms of political structure, they had different administrators and governors, starting with, John McLean. We're very familiar with these names in our, secondary school textbooks, to Sir Alden Clark. These were the governors who managed the territory on behalf of the Queen. Now, an important point to note here, even during the colonial era, the colonial Britain realized the importance of the traditional political structure we have. So they made use of the kings and the chiefs we have through what we call the indirect rule, you know, emphasizing the fact that it's not just our encounter with the Europeans that gave us some kind of political cohesion. So, post-colonial. So this is the focus of my presentation today. In 1957, on the 6th of March, Ghana attained independence, and during this time, Kwame Nkrumah, who was also mentioned by my brother, was the Prime Minister. He championed the cause of the independence. He served as Prime Minister, and he became the first President of the Republic in 1960 after the declaration of Ghana as a republic. This is important because we are looking at our political and democratization journey. Just to give a gist of information with respect to what a republic is. If a country is declared as a republic, it means that the people of that country have agreed to have a document that is called a constitution that regulates their affairs, okay? And this is significant in the sense that before, I mentioned the Ghana Empire and other empires, we have kings and queens, you know, issuing decrees as a source of law, you know, and this is really significant. So Ghana was declared a republic with Kwame Nkrumah as the first president. Now, there were so many challenges, you know, politically, but around 1963-64, there was growing discontent with Kwame Nkrumah for various reasons, economic, political, and there were attempts on his life. So this led him to declare Ghana as a single-party state and also embark on some policies that made him appear authoritarian. So the result of this was some military officers toppled him whilst he was away in China. He was, you know, toppled. So this ended the first epoch, you know. We started with the first Republican era, but unfortunately it was truncated by the military era. I wouldn't like to emphasize on that, but General ANKARA and APPRAISAL from 1966 and 1969, you know, handled Ghana as a military junta. But an important point politically here is that under APPRAISAL, there was general election which saw Busia come into power. And in a bit, we're going to see the impact of that. So what that meant was that it led us into a kind of second epoch historically, because Busia was kind of, you know, elected president. He came to power, and in 1970, specifically on the 31st of August, Ghana became second republic through an election again, and Justice Edward Akufo-Addo, the father of our current president, served as the president with Busia as the prime minister. But interestingly, there is difference between the presidency here, I mean then and now, and also the presidency of Nkrumah before. The presidency here was just ceremonial, so he had no powers actually. He was just kind of a ceremonial, you know, president. Most of the work was done by Dr. Busia. Again, unfortunately, this was also truncated, but this time, up to 7 years, very long, you know, military rule. We had General Champon coming in, and Akufo, then Rawlings. I will emphasize on Rawlings in a bit because, you know, he really held on to power for some time in our history. So, interestingly, again, the ARC, Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, led by J.J. Rawlings, conducted an election, or oversaw an election, which led to coming to the office of Dr. Hilary Mann. Hilary Mann also, ushered in a kind of third republic, and unfortunately, that also was overthrown by, coup, interestingly, by the same person who oversaw the coming to power of, Liman, meaning he was dissatisfied with something was wrong. So Ghana was back to, military rule. Again, this time it lasted for some time, and there are some significant issues I would like to look at in this respect. So as you can see, Ghana really, we started, with a lot of hope, with a lot of enthusiasm, but we were faced with a lot of challenges in terms of, civilian military rule here and there. But a fascinating aspect of our history is that if you look at 1981 to 1992, Ghana was under military rule, but ironically, it was that moment that the fundamentals of the current constitutions was, constructed. So the PNDC formed a commission called the National Commission for Democracy. It's very ironic actually, a military junta forming a commission in this regard. So it means, they had something in mind, they had a vision actually. So this was set up and they really did some work. We can't go into details, but they conducted some kind of survey across the 10 regions of Ghana. And the conclusion was that the Ghanaians are fed up with military interventions and are looking forward to multi-party democracy. And based on that, proposals were drafted by experts with respect to the 1992 Constitution, but most importantly, they took into consideration the 1957 Constitution, which was truncated, 1969 and 1979. So it became a kind of summary of the previous, failed, so to speak, constitutions we had. And the final draft of the Constitution was, put to test on 28th of April 1992, and it was widely accepted by the majority of Ghanaians. Over 90% of Ghanaians, according to the figures, agreed to, adopt the 1992 Constitution. And this also, sort of set a stage for the fourth, epoch in our historical journey towards democratization. There are lots of things, because if you look at not the abridged version, but the Constitution itself, I believe it's over 100 pages or so. So there are so many things we can talk about, and we can have a seminar even on that. But most importantly, it sets the basic framework with respect to democratization. The executive, the judiciary, and the legislature were firmly entrenched in the Constitution. Then, I did not mention this before, but during this rule from 1981 to 1992, or the early part of 1992, there was a ban on multi-party system, and the Constitution took care of that to bring back, multi-party democracy. And the Constitution also took care of something which is really important, especially with respect to our traditional rule. If you look at the Constitution, it gave excessive power to the president, but realizing this, the Constitution was quick to also ask for the establishment of the Council of State, which is made up of, I believe it's a balloon, right? Which is was it? Yeah. Okay, so we can continue then. Yes, so yeah. So it set up a council of states, made up of elders who are to counsel the president in matters regarding the peace, tranquility, and administration of the country. This is important because it's very consistent with our traditional rule. If you look at the chief and the king, kingship system, we have the king, and the king has some kind of elders who advises him on different issues. So this was really significant. I mean, we can go on and on to talk about, the constitution, but fast forward, I'm elated with respect to my time. I have two more epochs to talk about, 1993 to 2000. This is really significant, yet again, because in the fourth epoch, what happened was that due to internal and external pressure, and of course, maybe we are lucky that he agreed to do so. Rawlings agreed to take off military uniform and become civilian government. I don't know, maybe I'm yet to come across such. It's unusual in Africa actually for a military ruler to come back to civilian rule and to stand for election. So this happened in Ghana. It was really a sort of watershed moment. So with that 1992 constitution, Rawlings was elected as the president of Ghana, and he stood again, 96, right? 96, and he won. So for the first time in history of Ghana, a military officer converted into civilian stood for election twice under a newly constituted, constitution or newly drafted constitution. This is really a significant, moment, and we can go on and on to talk about it. Maybe if we have time for the discussion session. The last epoch I would like to talk about is 2001 to date. You see, this also, yet again, a watershed moment. Why? Because for the first time in history of Ghana, there was a transition of power from duly elected party handing over to another duly elected party without any confusion. And this really raised our image internationally and globally, and most of you might come across the saying that Ghana is the model of democracy in Africa. And these are some of the, pointers to this. It's really difficult if you look at other African countries to come by this. It is, I'm not saying it's not, but very rare. So this ushered in a very different epoch. An important point here is, with the coming of the administration of the MPP, the MPP took over from the NDC, I think they appreciated so much the fact that, the transition of power was smooth. And they tried as much as they could to also entrench some democratic principle. So interestingly, within 2001 to date, there's media liberalization in Ghana, to the extent that, excuse me to say, people call on radio to even, shed insult on political leaders without getting us arrested. It's not really a positive thing, but I'm just trying to emphasize on how liberal the media has become in Ghana. We have also the Electoral Commission, which has already been, set up by the 1992 Constitution, becoming very, independent of a sort than before. We have the SRAJ, which also is supposed to oversee human rights abuses. And most importantly, in 2002, the NPP government set up the National Reconciliation Committee, very important, point in the history of Ghana. And what was the use of this committee? The committee was supposed to open to, hearings from people whose rights have been violated from 1957. Interestingly, from 1957 to that time, and well, most of us were witnesses to the hearings. It took a very long time. It's, sort of drained our coffers. But I believe it was really a step forward when it comes to, democratization in our country. Even though most of the recommendations of the committee are yet to be finally, met, but still it was a great moment. Now, an appraisal, very quick one. A quick appraisal. In fact, if you look at the history of, Ghana, it's a history of up and downs, but a striking aspect of our journey is the fact that even military officers sort of contributed in a way towards democratization, and this is really significant. And if you look at the transitions, we had leaders who had the opportunity not to relinquish power, but they did. So it really sells the image of Ghana abroad. And most important document that has come out, the most important document that has come out from this journey is the 1992 Constitution. Frankly, it has some hitches, it has some lapses, but till date, I think that is the most comprehensive document we can be proud of. And it established a lot of, commissions and committees and institutions. Even though these institutions' role are yet to be fully realized, but what is significant is that incrementally, you realize that each and every government try as much as it can to, uphold the principle of democracy. So for over the past 25 years, Ghana has been democratic, and apparently we are not looking back, we are just looking forward to have more liberal and democratic, atmosphere for our country. And I would like to, end here. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed Badawi Mustapha. Without much ado, the people you meet on your way going up are definitely the same people you meet when you are coming. It is meet then that I will, with all due respect, show some bit of restraint when introducing the next speaker. We are supposed to have actually a coffee break, a short break. But you and I know that a program of this nature also, when we introduce this interlude, we will have a very low morale. So on this note, Mr. Chairman, with your kindest consideration, I would like to proceed without having the break. So much so that after the program is brought to a successful end, we would joy outside together. And on this note, let me give you just three minutes of sentimentalism. Sentimentalism simply means, here in this context, to have a brother of ours who would come with a monologue. Of course, in his own words, he has something in the form of remix with regards to Turkish, to English, to Arabic, and what have you, to some local languages in Ghana. When you don't understand, I shall return, Mr. Chairman, to also give you. On this note, let me invite Musa Sapientus. The stage is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, and I will not take much of your time because I know everybody wants to go out as well as I also want to go there too. And also, in case Merake Diosan is yani, I'm here to just give you some small facts about Ghana. And thanks very much to my elder colleagues over here. They said it all, but I think they left some things outside. They might take it alone, it's irrelevant. But let me tell you, if you ever intend to go to Ghana, you need this. So please give me your class. Okay, I know they talk about Ghana being the first country to get independence and what. Let's forget about that one. And also before Banks' Lake, Ghana was Gold Coast, Alton Sahid. We don't need that one over here. We have already given those ones. Okay, now let's go. Let me just ask you this simple question. Yeah, did you know, Bilion Mugunus, that girl voter in Ghana is the largest girl in the world? Did you know that? Girl voter, late voter, good voter. No problem, you let me continue. You get it later. And let me give you just two words. I mean, some words which have different meaning or side meanings in Ghana. Let me say, if a Ghanaian tell you that this man is a volunteer, he doesn't mean the person that's going to do or that did something. No, he's a night vigilante. And also, if a Ghanaian man tells you, oh, this thing, I balance it, he doesn't mean it is balanced. No, he means the opposite. It's not balanced. That's what he means. Okay, let me not take much of your time. And also, we have some special words, or let me say some universal words in Ghana. They don't mean, they are not brands. They are the universal names. Example, it's Omo. If you say Omo, it means all the washing detergent. That's what we are talking about. We don't mean only Omo. As well as when we tell you China, it's for all on the original goods. Let's continue. And some of you used to watch, let me say, football highlights and movies to refresh their memories. They don't want to forget about some events. But Ghanaians, we have photographic memories. There are some dates or some events we will never forget about it. And we will never watch maybe the replay or something, but we will never forget about it. One is our Independence Day, as we all know. That's the reason why we are here 6 March. And also as a modern penalty. Okay, now let me just be through my consumer, very short, with some small Ghanaian proverbs. Okay. We have something that we say, Okotong one man. Don't worry, I'll translate it. A crowd doesn't beget a bed. And also, let me just give you something small before I just finish. It's going to be Zor, but Zor doesn't mean inconsistent. We all know that code. Of course, so that's what the Akan people will tell you. Nkakan kakra, kukobenumsu. Yavash yavash, jib jib, suche.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Musa Sapientus. Even Dr. Rashid, General Secretary of GAKİD, I think from time to time we need things like this. Doesn't it release tension from the body from the medical perspective? Musa Sapientus once again, Ben Bende Chukteshiku Ediuru. Mr. Chairman, we have come to the ultimate. I think his was the penultimate. We have come to the round of rounds. The man of the moment. Our third speaker, just like the others who came before him. That was why I told you, the people you meet on your way going up are definitely the same people you meet on your way coming. He also had his education, basic education at Ghana, Lebanon Islamic Senior Secondary School. Not in Lebanon as a country, of course, but Lebanon in Ghana, called Gliss. He graduated and proceeded once again to the Premier, and I think this is unfair. Only those from Premier University are speaking today. And I guess the MC himself is from the Premier University. Oh yes, I am. He proceeded to the University of Ghana, where he read a Bachelor of Arts in Economics. He graduated, that was when I popped head in Lagos also. Fortunately, I met him when he was en route to the land of the Queen, UK, to present the paper. That was when I was a Nino at the university. I didn't know what presenting a paper was. Presenting a paper. How do you go to England to present a paper? Of course. After his return, I met him. a brony. He just returned from the United Kingdom, the land of our dreams. Of course, our colonial masters, we prefer to zigzag there and come back. You know the typical black man, when the money comes, you want to flex more outside. He returned and wanted to also proceed in the same way as our first speaker. But I think I'm part of the people who convinced him Asia shouldn't be for you. We say Asian tiger. What is Asian tiger? Let's go to the Middle East also. So, on the same plane as the first two speakers, we zigzagged from Kotoka and found ourselves at Atatürk International Airport. He came to Hacettepe to study for his master's degree and graduated. Sorry, he did his master's at Legon once again. And then came here for his PhD yet again in economics. Ladies and gentlemen, he is not also a guru and unattached but unavailable too. He is a husband, a loving one for that matter, to a beautiful wife, with two lovely kids, just like our first speaker. You know the second speaker, he should have been the third, you know. Anyway, he also has two kids, and I call him Hashem, because he is a chef. When he comes, you can see a representation from the beard. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Dr. Mohammed Abdul ADADA.
Mr. Chairman, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be on this platform and to be a part of this wonderful program. My topic is Ghana's economy at 61, history, challenges and prospects. But like the first two speakers have said, 30 minutes is very short to talk about all the things we really want to talk about in each of the topics that we have been given. And I'm very lucky to have had the first two speakers speak before me because they have made my job a bit easier. So I'm not going to bombard you with a lot of talk. I want the figures and the diagrams to do the talking. So in the forthcoming slides you are going to have, I'm just going to give a brief analysis of the diagrams you are going to see, just to give you an idea of the state of the Ghanaian economy at the moment. So I'll try to talk about as much aspects of the Ghanaian economy as possible. So this is the outline of my presentation. Like I did mention in the introduction, I'm not going to do a lot of talking. And my analysis is going to be on the trends and then also some evidence from empirical research. And then most of the data I have, unfortunately, is limited to 2016. And even in some aspects, in some years are missing, so you are going to have to make do with that. I will try to make it as easy as possible to understand. The first diagram I have is actually a trend of Ghana's GDP in constant prices and then in current prices. The one in the orange line is the constant price GDP, and we can see that it has been on a constant increase from 1960 up to 2016. And if later when we look at the growth rate, we are going to see that within the period that our brothers have talked about, where we had military interventions and stuff, it has actually affected our economy negatively. And we are going to look at that in the next slide. This is the GDP per capita. We can see that from 1960, it has been on a downward trend. And then it began to pick up somewhere in 2000, and then we will see why later in the presentation. This is the trend analysis of the growth rate of the Ghanaian GDP. We can see from between 1964 and 1984, it has been very volatile. And one of the reasons is that we have had a lot of political situations within this period. But not only that, somewhere from 1970 to 1982, the third world countries known as Global South have had serious crises with respect to their economies. And as a result of that, most of the economies had to invite the IMF and the World Bank to help out. And I'm sure most of the other African countries have had this program known as the Economic Reform Program. And according to empirical research, the Economic Reform Program actually helped to lift those economies out of the difficulties they found themselves. So you can see from 1984 up to 2006, we have had positive growth rates, even though they have not been really significant. And after 2006, it began to actually go higher. And the reason is that from 2007 onwards, Ghana had ushered itself into a new economic phase with the discovery of oil and then later its production in commercial quantities. And this, together with other issues, one of which is GDP rebasement. Rebasement simply means looking at an alternative method of measuring GDP to take care of certain things that the pre-existing method doesn't take care of. And one of the things that significantly was captured in the rebasement was the informal sector, which is very significant for the Ghanaian economy and for most developing countries. Now, this is just a summary of our performance between the times we have. On the basis of the average growth rate for the period 2006-2015, Ghana ranked 21st in the world as the 21st fastest growing economy in the world. But this improved significantly by 2017. When we take the average of 2008-2017, Ghana moved to the 11th fastest growing economy in the world. Now, the interesting thing is that as of January 2018, which is the current figure we have, Ghana is the third fastest growing economy in the world, behind Libya, which is 31.2. And the reason why Libya is the fastest growing economy in the world today is because they are beginning to recapture the effect of oil after the crisis they've had with the overthrow of Mohammed. And then also Bhutan is another country which has a very high growth rate. I may not know the reasons why, but Ghana is the third fastest growing economy in the world as of January 2018. And one of the reasons, like I said, is the oil. We are beginning to reap the benefits of oil production, but also there is boom in the service sector, which captures both the formal and the informal economy, actually. And then for the period 1991 to 2013, Ghana's economy grew faster than the entire sub-Saharan region, which had 5.8 compared to sub-Saharan 3.7. And due to this impressive growth in the Ghanaian economy, Ghana attained the status of lower middle income status in 2007, which means we moved from a low income country to a lower middle income country. And we are hoping that as we begin to exploit more our oil capacity and then also take advantage of the agricultural programs, which I will discuss later, we can even move higher into the real middle income status. Now, why have we had so much impressive growth performance for these years? Like I said, one of the reasons is peace and stability, and like I showed, between 1960 and 1984, we have had fluctuations and volatility within our economy, which was because of the economic instability. And when we began to attain stability from 1982 onwards, up to constitutional government to what we have today, it began to have a positive impact on our economy with the positive growth that we've had. And then I also talked about the national account rebasing, which is simply a change in methodology of calculating the national income to capture things that may have not been captured using the pre-existing method. And it's a methodology a lot of countries are using now. And the reason why it is significant for Ghana is that some other countries have also used rebasing, but the rebasing they have used has not had any significant impact on their economy. Which means that since it is having a significant impact on the Ghanaian economy, it means that previously there were a lot of things that have been left out in the calculation of our national income. And then also the production of oil in commercial quantities. These are some of the reasons we've had. So as we can see, in the mining and oil sector under the industrial sector, from 2006 to 2007-2013 average, we've moved significantly from 4.5 to 37.7 growth, which is really telling us the impact of oil production in commercial quantities, from a single digit to a very significant double digit. And then that propelled the overall contribution, the overall growth of the industrial sector to 12.9 from an initial 5.5, which is really significant. And the other thing, which is overlooked a lot, but is very important, is the construction subsector, which has also moved significantly from 6.6 to 15.8, which is really telling us that our construction subsector is also growing very well. And you could see that in recent times, within especially in the urban sectors of the Ghanaian economy. So how do these growth performances affect the lives of the people? And here I'm going to refer to some figures as well. Now, if you look at the poverty-related statistics that we have, the first one is the poverty headcount as a percentage of the entire population at $1.9 per day. This simply tells us the number of people who are living below $1.9 per day in the country. The other one is telling us the number of people as a percentage of the population that is living below $3.2 per day. And then we have the national poverty line, then the Gini index. Now, I will come to the Gini index later, but we can see from the statistics that even though it's significant, in 1987, 40% of Ghanaians were living below $1.9 a day. It has been on a consistent decline until what we have in 2012, which unfortunately is the latest data we have, is 13.6%. So we can see that there is a significant decline in the incidence of poverty at $1.9 per day in the country, which means also that the growth performance is reflecting in reduction in poverty. The same it can be seen from the second one and the third one. All of them have consistently declined over the years, even though they are still quite high, and we must do a lot to actually reduce them further. Now, the Gini index actually measures the extent of inequality within the economy, income inequality. So it tells you how much of the growth gains is being distributed fairly amongst the populace. So the higher the index, closer to 100, it means that we are close to perfection in terms of distribution. It means everybody is getting equal share of the growth gains. But the closer you are to zero means that the inequality is high, which means that there's unfair distribution of income amongst the populace. We can see that our index has not been significant. It's still below 50%, which is a cause to worry, because it means that there is still high inequality, but it has been improving from 1987 up to 2012, which is also a positive, which means that our gains are actually affecting the daily lives of the people. Now, this is the Human Development Index also, which also measures the state of the lives of the people. And in this instance, it's not just income, but it includes other criteria as well. And one of them is a long and healthy life, and the other is knowledge, and the third is the decent standard. So it's a composite index that captures these three aspects of the lives of the people. And in this case, the closer you are to 100, the more humanly developed you are as a country. And so when you look at countries like Norway and Switzerland and countries like that who are at the very top of the Human Development Index ranking, they have close to 1 or close to 100, 0.9 thereabouts. And we also have chalked great success in terms of the human development of our people. Even though in 1990 it was below 50% or less than half, now we have moved by 2015 to 0.5, so which is an improvement, even though it's not as much as we might want it to be. It means that our growth performance is actually impacting the lives of the people. The only negative we may have is with respect to employment, and this has a lot of factors associated with it. A study by Badawi revealed that every 1% of our annual growth generates 0.47%, which means that our employment is not responding as much as our growth. It means that we are not employing as much as we are growing. Are you getting the point? So, and when we look at the employment diagram, we will see that it's very slow to respond, and there are a lot of reasons why this may be the case, which later I will talk about. On the basis of this, we expect a slow response of employment to growth. The very top line, these ones are missing figures, so don't worry about them from 96, of course. The very top one is the overall employment as a percentage of the total labor force. And you can see that that's not really been bad, but it's not as much as we expect. This includes both the formal and the informal sector, by the way. So if it looks quite high, it shouldn't surprise you, even though we have a lot of issues with respect to employment in the country at the moment. But the very significant thing I want to show is that the blue line actually measures the contribution of the agricultural sector, whilst the green line shows the contribution of the service sector. You can see that whilst agriculture is on significant decline, service is quite on the rise, and we will see why later in our presentation, whilst industry has been quite stable, if I have enough time to explain why. And this is the comparison between economic growth and then employment growth. We can see that employment growth has not been very responsive to economic growth. Now, I just want to give a brief outline of the structure of the Ghanaian economy. Like I did mention, the Ghanaian economy is dominated by the informal sector. The informal sector is shown to have actually employed about 80% of the labor force in Ghana, and this has moved significantly to 86.1% in 2000. So the total employment we have, 80% of it comes from the informal sector. Now 86% of it comes from the informal sector, which means that the formal sector actually employs less than 14% of the total employment we have in Ghana. This tells you how significant the informal sector is. And what is the informal sector? It is simply the sector that is not really under the control of government because of the way it is structured. Now, also, the TUC reported that yearly graduation from the various institutions, educational institutions we have, produces up to 250,000 employment-ready persons who are ready to be employed, both from the second cycle and then the tertiary institutions. And out of this, only 5,000 get absorbed in the formal sector. So it tells you that the rest of the 245,000 will have to look for a job in the informal sector, or they remain unemployed. And the other alternative is to set up themselves, and those have challenges of their own. So, but like one of our presenters did mention, that a lot of these issues are not limited to Ghana alone. It's an issue that has to do with a lot of developing countries, and we must work together to solve them. The other issue is that Ghana is primarily an exporter of primary goods. We have not been doing very well in terms of export of manufactured goods, which actually tells us a lot about our manufacturing subsector. And when you look at the statistics, it tells you that the manufacturing subsector contributes very low to the entire income of Ghana. And since I didn't have data for the primary goods export, I used the manufacturing export statistic to show you the extent to which we export primary goods. The highest we've got for manufacturing has ever been 33%, which means that the rest of the percentage in export actually comes from primary goods. Now, I will call Ghana an agricultural economy, and the reason is that we have a capacity, a very huge capacity for agricultural growth, even though we are not exploiting them fully. And this is just a diagram to show you the area of land that is classified as agricultural. And then our climate is also very supportive of agricultural production, even though when we looked at the contribution of employment, that of agriculture has been on a significant decline over the years. And here is the contribution of each industry to the entire GDP, and you could see that agriculture has been on decline while service has been on the rise. And this is also associated with the growth of the informal sector, because the informal sector is largely service, but also the growth of the formal service sector. And I just enumerated some of the reasons why our agriculture has been on decline. I just want to see that. And in recent times, we have had some improvements in terms of production of high and medium technology products. And one of the examples is the RLG company, which produces mobile phones and also computers. It's actually the first indigenous African company to produce and assemble such products within an African country. It has grown, and now it has branches in these countries. It also trains young people. Actually, in the previous government, under the previous government, there was a collaboration between RLG and the government to produce graduates who are competent in computer and also mobile. This is just an example of the products that RLG produces. The other one is also car production, which has also grown significantly in the last few years. We have the Kantanka automobile company, which is now producing in commercial quantities, actually, which is significant for us. And these are examples of some of the cars they produce. Actually, they actually manufacture it in Ghana. They don't just assemble it, they manufacture it in Ghana. And gradually, the market is growing for this brand as well. And what are the challenges we've had? One of the challenges we've had is how reactionary our policy making is. And the example I want to give is with respect to electricity generation. We know that significantly in our history, we have been dependent on hydroelectricity as our main source of power generation. And the main dam, which was the Akusombo Dam, some few years ago began to develop problems because the water levels was slowing down, and as a result of that, the entire country had an energy crisis, and it went on for some time. But the point I want to highlight is that it was only after this crisis emerged that we began to take measures to actually expand our power generation, which we could have actually done, because in the very early years of our democracy or after independence, we had enough to the extent of us exporting to some of the other countries. And you could see that the orange line, which is power production from hydroelectric sources, has been almost 100%. And it's only in the last few years that the other sources have actually made some contributions in this regard. Production of skilled labor is a problem. Just when we started the production of oil in commercial quantities, we had to import some skilled personnel from other countries to augment our demand for skilled labor. And even though our educational system has been producing quite well, but it's still a problem we must deal with, in actual fact. Of course, corruption is a problem, so I don't want to. Yeah, human attitude is also a problem. Now, our potential, I just want to briefly summarize. The data we have on oil production says that our capacity is up to 3 billion barrels of oil, which could expand to 5 billion. And with this capacity, Ghana was expected to be producing 1 to 2 million barrels per day. But as of 2012, our production was simply 200,000, which is less than 20% of our production capacity, which means that if we can expand our capacity to produce the oil we have in reserve, we could actually maximize the benefit of our oil resource. So this is an aspect, and I think the state is doing its own part to expand this. Recently there has been talk of ExxonMobil coming to also start oil exploration in Ghana. And then also, the President of the Republic mentioned that there was another significant discovery on the way in his last State of the Nation address. So in terms of natural resources, we are actually on a very positive path. But we can exploit these further if we can manage what we have very well. History tells us that we haven't really benefited from gold, the gold reserve we had. The other aspect is agriculture, which, as I mentioned, our capacity is very significant, and if we can pay attention to it, we can actually maximize the benefits from our agricultural sector. And here I would like to highlight 3 recent policies of the government, which I think if it is transformed into a national plan, agricultural plan, which can be continued by subsequent governments, it will be very helpful. The one dam, one district, one factory, which is tailored to take advantage of prevalent outputs in each of the districts, which means that farmers will have ready markets for their output, which will go into the factory. The factory can employ as much as possible within the locality it has been established, and this can help both employment and agriculture. The other one is one village, one dam, to take care of our irrigation problems, to make agricultural production year-round. And then the third one is planting for food and job, which has been shown to be significant in terms of the benefits we have derived so far. Thank you for your attention, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed Abdul Rahim ADADA. Ladies and gentlemen, before I hand over to Mr. Chairman, let me use this minute to lament seriously about the constraints of time. I think it's worth continuing to the darkest moment of the night, but time is not our friend. I wish we could continue. Having perused through the program lineup, we have certain things we would skip. Solidarity messages, suggestions, contributions, comments, questions and answers that are of utmost importance, which ought to be skipped because of time constraints. Because we didn't start early, so we would end at our appointed time. Since we have a couple of organizations outside who are going to use the room for equally important events. And on this note, Mr. Chairman, let me designate myself to give the vote of thanks for this symposium. Our honorable speakers, first, second, third, you did brilliant. The lizard that jumped from the high Iroko tree to the ground says, if no one else praises it, it will praise itself. But on this note, I am praising you. Kwikokari, you have done well. Get chieftain, get chieftain. You have wished that. You. Same Bashkan, Mr. Chairman. Let me call on our first speaker to give them a widow's mite. This is a token of appreciation for the wonderful job done, because using your brain to submit a paper in his words is not a small thing for people like us. On this note, let me invite the chairman, the vice chairman of GAKİD to do us the honors by presenting a token of a certificate and plaque to our honorable first speaker, Dr. Mohammed MUBARIQUE. With a round of applause, let's go. With a round of applause, with a round of applause. Thank you very much. And then, I think he should have a plate there. Yes. No bagawaya. No bagawaya. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. And one more thing, I guess he has something there, I think. Yes. Tomorrow, when you and I are called, we will also try to submit a paper. How could I? Let the people see. They want to see. Oh, yes.
So nice.
This is a surprise for him. Can I have a touch? I can drink with it. Thank you. All right. And let me also seize this golden opportunity to invite one of our brothers who is representing those brothers from afar. Dr. Abdul, please do us the honors of presenting to Doctor, from Doctor to Doctor, dear, to Dr. Ahmed Badawi Mustafa. Please, let's clap for them. Let's clap for them. Thank you, thank you. This is only a video smite. A video smite. Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Congrats, congrats. With regards to your questions, your comments, your issues, criticisms, and what have you, please, we are in a position to email the presentations to you if you want. After this, contact the General Secretary or his assistant. They will do so for you. And if the questions are not enough, we will organize a special session. This is coming from my co-chair in the person of Sheikh Hassan at the Badawi. We will organize another session specifically to attend to your questions and answers. Let me zigzag into the continent. Let me invite a brother and a friend to also do us the honors. Let me welcome Brother Hamid Bouakai Kamara from Sierra Leone to do us the honor of presenting to Dr. ADADA. Congratulations. Congratulations, congratulations. We appreciate your use of brains. Ghana is proud of you. GAKİD is proud of you. Yay. Thank you very much. Before I hand over to Mr. Chairman, seriously and from the deepest of our hearts of hearts, we really do appreciate your time spent despite your busy working schedules to attend to our program, the troops that we have here, and most especially to Adam, and I guess everybody knows Adam, for granting us unilaterally their room and facilities to use. Our gratitude will not be enough. We will invoke upon the Lord for you. We really do appreciate it. And our brothers and sisters from our sister countries in Africa, we thank you so much. We do, in all honesty, acknowledge your presence. It's worth it. Without your support, and most importantly, your presence, this program wouldn't have seen the light of the day. Mr. Chairman, I hand over to you to give us your closing remarks. And then, we will give a closing remarks. Mr. Chairman, do that before we do the patch up.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. I think the program has been very successful. Has been very successful, and we thank our speakers for making it possible. I wouldn't want to do the summary because we are behind time, so I thank you all for your support, and I thank you for coming.
We have some bits of mashrabut and eatables and drinkables. You can make yourselves comfortable, brothers and sisters. Once again, thank you very much. I dare say the session is officially closed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.